What the world needs now is love, sweet love. You may not know the song. You guys are too young.
Yeah, I don't know
I
it.
don't know that one.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. I was high school student body president. We were doing a radio broadcast from the big station in Harrisburg, PA. A guy who went with the three of us who were there was going to sing a solo. The pianist didn't show up. I can play by ear. He was going to sing What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. And the guys dared me, and I went along with it. I was going to change keys in the middle of his solo because none of us liked him a lot. Now look at that. What the world needs now, and here's the pianist messing him up. My conscience wouldn't let me do it. I didn't do it, just so you're okay. Stay tuned. But it's so much in any of us not to show love and not work outside ourselves. You're with Pastorpedia. I'm with Jeff Bogue, Jim Brown. Let's talk about this. What are the best ways for you to show love to your church? Let's talk to pastors.
We'll just begin. When people show up, show them that you love them. Sunday mornings, regardless of how many times you preach or when you preach, you have before services and after services. Greet your people, give them a touch. I walk through our hallways, even our volunteers, between services and before services, high five the volunteers, thank them for being there. I acknowledge their presence. And sometimes Knute and I were traveling together today, and I said, often I'll open up a message on a Sunday morning and just say this: I am so glad you showed up today. You could have went to a bunch of other places, but you made the effort. Good job. It's good to see you.
You say it.
I say it. Yeah, I say it. I love you a lot, or Heidi and I love you guys, and we've committed to give our lives to you. But people have to trust that before they hear you say it. And so you feel loved, or you feel don't feel loved. I wrote down things like this. I think live with them, like share life with them. And the smaller your church is, the better you have an opportunity to do this. It can get harder as things get bigger, but we try to hang out with people, and we did that. Heidi and I did that a lot informally when the church was smaller. Now we have to kind of like set up meetings or make an appointment, but we want to know people. I wrote down lead well. When you think about how many people are hurt by churches and hurt by integrity breaks and bad leadership decisions, like one of the most loving things that we can do is like do our best and lead well. I said keep your personal house in order. I like to say in marriage a lot, best thing you can give your kids is a good marriage.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And so in some ways, the best thing you can give your church is your good family. And I don't mean fake family, and I don't mean put pressure on your kids, but I mean taking the time to prioritize it so that you are healthy and your family's healthy. And then what Jim was saying, like find a way to communicate it.
Right.
Like say things out loud, give the hug, give the touch, be there in those moments, cry with people, laugh with them, but just go through life together. And people will know if you enjoy them or if this is just
Quickly.
a job for you.
They'll know quickly. And some simple things. I mean, everyone has a way. We live in a social media crowd. We have a telephone. I think a birthday is a pretty important day in a person's life, and I try my best, generally speaking. If it's your birthday and you're on social media, I'm going to send you a birthday greeting, just acknowledge, hey, it's your day. And so every morning I go through and look at birthdays, and I send a little note to each person that's their birthday. And it's just a way of saying, hey, I know you're here and happy birthday.
Every pastor's going to answer the question, true or false, do you love your people?
Yeah.
You've got to show it. You've got to say it. Spending time. Your mentor, one of your good friends, Bob Combs, always talked about the picture. What was that?
What he would say is be in the snapshot. So he would say in a celebration or a tragedy, the pastor should be that when there's a celebration or there's a tragedy, the people take a mental snapshot. And Bob would say, as a pastor, you want to be in the background of that picture. You don't need to be in the forefront of it. But when people remember their loved one's death, you want them to remember that you were there or that you cared, right?
I'll give you a great illustration where I blew it. Just this weekend, I was in between services, had one of our faithful ushers, 15 years ushering with us, Chris Coyne, came in. And I said, hey, Chris, how you doing? He said, And he came up and he said, my father-in-law died last week or the week before, and Vicki and I have been coming for 2 years, and her sister came in for the funeral, and they asked, "Hey, has the church reached out to you? Have you heard a touch from a pastor? Have you given a meal?" And he didn't even go to our church, her father-in-law, and he said, "Man," we said no, and he said, "I actually thought about this being my last Sunday of serving here, because how could I come here all these years and there wasn't a touch?" And he said, I soon realized that that my thoughts on that, I operate the same way. I haven't been to anybody's funeral, but him saying that, I just stopped and said, "Chris, I blew it, man. We blew it as a team. We do love you." And I didn't try to make an excuse, but we dropped the ball, and it means a lot to people in those kind of times. And I felt horrible. In fact, this morning I sent Vicki and him a note just apologizing again. I want them to know that I care and admit when I blow it. I think people appreciate that.
And they'll forgive you for that because they know that you love them. Even as the church is larger, like our church is larger, I still try to send a note every time there's any kind of death that we know about. I also send a note at the 1-year anniversary of that death. I will do any funeral I'm able to do. So if they ask for me, and they usually do because you're the one up front, if I can do it, I'll do it. I don't want to lose that connection with people. And then even when I have to say no, they trust that I would have been there. Sometimes I can go to it or do a part of it, but you never outgrow that. And that is part of shepherding. And what happens when your church is smaller, everybody probably went to the funeral. When the church is larger, the person you're able to love, they'll let other people know that you tried to love them. Right. And it's not about managing reputation. It's just more about actually just communicating what I actually feel. I wish I could do everything because I do love you, and people trust that. So just being there and showing up is a big, big deal.
I agree.
Pastors are notorious for not listening when you're listening, supposed to be. Love is also putting the other person first and asking questions. I told her I loved her when we got married. If anything changes, I'll let her know. It's an old joke. But pastors need to say their love and show it this way.
Yep. Nobody works like that. Nobody works good on assumptions, and nobody works good on, well, we talked about that 3 years ago. And what I find sometimes is that conversation may be ingrained in my mind, and I'm like, well, I just talked to you about that, but it was a long time ago. What happens a lot is I don't remember the conversation. People will come back 3 years later and they'll say, well, you said this 3 years ago. So functioning in that loving relationship and desire is a big, big deal. It sticks with people.
It impacts your preaching too. If you know what's happening in the life of your church, if you're disconnected from that, you're just speaking overheads.
Right.
But if you're preaching and you've just experienced a funeral or a death or a high or low, and you've been aware of that, when you preach, it shapes the application of your message, and you're better connected.
Your attitude shows. Do I talk down to people? Do I love them and talk equally?
Yeah.
I have here 1 Corinthians 13. You know the chapter?
I read it once.
Yeah.
There's not much emotion in there. There's a whole lot of action. It's patient. It's kind. Does not envy. Love is action to meet the needs of another. We urge you to love your people. You're with Pastorpedia. We're talking about how Christ was known, the essential ingredient. He loved us. He loves the world. God does. Sends Christ. What does he describe himself? I am meek and lowly in heart. You'll find rest. Come to me. Be a pastor, a church leader who loves people. Thank you for joining us on Pastorpedia. With Jeff Bogue, Jim Brown, I'm Knute Larson, and we thank you very much.